Have you ever wondered what the darkness hidden in a quiet, deserted town could be? Whispering Valley, a small town in New England, is a place where the rustling of trees echoes with untold stories. People say there's something in the air that draws you in and never leaves. When four friends arrive there for an exciting weekend trip, they expect to enjoy nature. But that night, when a whisper from the woods reaches their ears, "You are mine," they realize they are not alone. Will they be able to get out of that cursed valley alive, or will the mystery there haunt them forever? Let's know the whole story in today's video. It was a cold New England evening. The air was crisp, and the last rays of the sun were hiding behind the maple trees. After a 3-hour drive from Boston, four friends Jake, Emily, Sarah, and Lucas were heading to Whispering Valley in their old Jeep Cherokee. The Jeep's radio was broken, and Sarah had been playing a playlist on her phone for the past hour. But the signal was getting weaker. "Sarah, do you really think there's a campsite in this woods?" Jake asked, gripping the steering wheel. There was a slight annoyance in his voice. Jake, a 26-year-old fitness trainer, had always been strict about planning. But this trip was Sarah's idea, and all she'd said was that there was an old campsite in Whispering Valley that was pretty cool. "Yeah, Jake, I read it online. There's a lake, some old cabins, and the vibe is perfect," Sarah said, shaking her phone as if trying to get a signal back. Sarah, a 24-year-old graphic designer, was always on the lookout for strange and mysterious places. Emily, who was sitting next to Lucas in the back seat, looked up from her book. "I just hope the ghost stories aren't true. I've heard people hear weird noises in Whispering Valley." Her voice was mocking, but her eyes were slightly frightened. "Ghosts? Really, Emily? You still take horror movies seriously?" Lucas laughed. Lucas, 25, was a musician who always kept the group's mood light. But his laughter stopped when the Jeep rounded a sharp turn, and the sight in front of them took everyone's breath away. There was an old signboard on the side of the road that read, "Welcome to Whispering Valley." The wooden board was worn, and the paint was peeling. There was something else written in small letters below it, but it was getting dark and nobody could read it. There was a strange tingling sound in the air, as if someone was whispering. "This place looks really creepy," Jake said, and pushed the Jeep forward. The road was getting narrower now, and dense forest surrounded them on both sides. The phone signal had completely disappeared. It was night by the time they reached the campsite. The Jeep's headlights illuminated an old wooden cabin that stood in the middle of the forest. There was a small lake nearby, the water glistening in the moonlight. The four of them unpacked their bags and headed for the cabin. "See, I told you this place would be great," Sarah said excitedly, but there was a slight quiver in her voice. The cabin door opened by itself, and cold air wafted in from inside. Jake lit the flashlight and stepped inside. "Hello? Is there anybody?" he called out, but was met with silence. Inside was an old couch, a few broken chairs, and a fireplace that hadn't been used in years. Moss had grown on the walls, and there was a slight smell of rot in the air. "Is it okay to stay here?" Emily asked softly. "Yeah, of course. We'll clean up a bit, light a fire, and have some fun," Lucas said, pulling out his guitar. She started to play a few tunes, but then a sound came from outside, a faint, muffled whisper. "What was that?" asked Sarah, startled. The four of them stepped outside. Shadows moved along the lake shore, but the air was still. "Probably deer," said Jake, but his voice sounded unsure. That night, as they were getting ready for bed, Emily looked out the window. A figure stood by the lakeshore in the moonlight, tall, thin, and very still. She shook Sarah. "Look there!" But by the time Sarah woke up, the figure had disappeared. "You must be hallucinating," said Sarah. But the fear in her eyes was clear. The night grew darker, and the whispers from the woods began again. This time the words were clear, "You're mine." The four friends were now convinced that something was wrong in Whispering Valley, very wrong. The silence of the night had awakened the four friends from their sleep. The wooden walls of the cabin were damp with cold, and the whispers coming from outside were becoming clearer. "You're mine." These words floated in the air, as if some invisible force hovered around them. Jake tried to light a fire in the fireplace, but the wood was wet, and only smoke came out. "What nonsense!" Jake said in annoyance. He picked up the flashlight and looked outside. The moonlight was still shining on the surface of the lake, but its reflection seemed broken, as if there was some disturbance in the water. "I think we should leave here in the morning." "Jake, it's only 2 o'clock in the morning. We can't go down the forest road in the dark," Sarah said. There was fear in her voice, but she was trying to hide it. "And anyway, it's probably just the noise of the wind." "The sound of the wind? Sarah, didn't you hear that sound? It said clearly, 'You were mine,'" Emily said, wrapping the blanket around herself. Her eyes were directed toward the window, where she had seen the figure. "I think someone's watching us." Lucas, who had been silent until now, suddenly got up and slung his guitar over his shoulder. "Okay, guys, if there's a ghost in here, I'll chase them away with my tune." He tried to joke, but his laughter sounded dry and fake. He walked to the door and opened it. A gust of cold wind blew in, followed by the whispers again. This time it was louder, as if someone was standing nearby. "Lucas, come back!" Emily yelled, but Lucas stepped outside. He turned the flashlight toward the forest. The shadows of the trees looked long and twisted, as if they were moving. Then something flashed in the torchlight, a pair of eyes, yellow and glowing, among the bushes. "There's someone in there!" Lucas stepped back and tried to close the door, but it was stuck. Jake ran to it, and they pushed it together. As soon as the door closed, Sarah pushed a chair against it. "What was that? Did you see it?" Lucas was breathing heavily. "Maybe it was an animal, a bear or something," Jake said, but his face was pale. "We have to get out of here before morning." "What if it wasn't an animal?" Emily said softly. She pointed to the window. Outside on the lakeshore, the same figure appeared again, tall, thin, and still. This time, it was a little closer. Its face was hidden in darkness, but the air was heavy with its presence. "It's not a person," Sarah whispered. "Look, its feet. They're above the ground." All four eyes focused on the figure. Sarah was right, its feet weren't touching the ground. It was floating in the air, slowly moving toward them. Then the window pane shook slightly, as if someone had touched it. "We're stuck here." Emily's voice shook. "We have to do something." Jake pulled an old baseball bat from his bag. "If it comes in, I'll teach it a lesson, host or something." He waved the bat in the air, but his courage seemed pretentious. Just then Lucas heard something. "Wait, what is that?" She listened. The whisper now sounded like a song, slow, eerie, and hypnotic. The words were unclear, but there was something in the melody that drew them in. Sarah's eyes slowly began to close, as if she were drifting off to sleep. "Sarah, wake up!" Emily shook her, but Sarah stood up smiling and started toward the door. "He's calling me," Sarah said, walking dreamily. "I have to go." Jake grabbed her and sat her back on the couch. "Nobody is calling you. It's magic. Or maybe we're all going crazy." But then the window pane shattered. The pieces of glass scattered on the floor, and the figure's shadow was now falling inside the cabin. Her whisper had turned into a scream, "You're mine!" And a cold black mist entered. The four friends jumped back screaming. Lucas's guitar fell to the floor, and the sound of its strings breaking echoed in the air. The figure was now near the door, and its yellow eyes glowed in the darkness. "We have to get out of here now," Jake yelled. But outside was the jungle, and they had to get past the figure to get to the Jeep. Would they find the courage to do it? Or would the mystery of the Whispering Valley consume them forever? The atmosphere inside the cabin had changed completely. The cold mist coming from the broken window was swirling around the four friends, and the figure's yellow eyes were glowing near the door. The whispers had turned into a terrified scream that echoed in their ears. Jake held the baseball bat tightly, but his breathing was fast and his hands were shaking. "We have to get out of here now," Jake yelled. He grabbed Sarah by the shoulder, who was still under the influence of the hypnotic tune. "Sarah, come to your senses!" Emily slapped Sarah's cheek lightly. "Sarah, please, we need you." Sarah's eyes slowly cleared, and she looked around. "What? What's going on?" Her voice was weak. "I'll explain later. For now, just come with us," Lucas said, and tried to pick up his broken guitar, but then dropped it. "Where are the keys to the Jeep?" Jake searched his pocket. "Here it is. But we have to get past that thing." He pointed to the door, where the figure was closer by now. His body was blurry, as if he was a mixture of air and shadow. His long, thin fingers touched the door, and the wood creaked with each touch. "Let's go out the back," Emily suggested. She looked at the back of the cabin, where there was a small door, probably used as a storeroom. "He probably won't see us there." "Okay, let's go." Jake stepped forward and tried to open that door, but it was jammed. He pushed with his shoulder, and finally it opened. Outside was a dense forest, and the Jeep was parked about 50 meters away. The moonlight was filtering through the branches of the trees and falling on the ground, but the air was still heavy. The four of them got out and started running. The cold wind blew against their faces, and the scream echoed behind them again. "You're mine!" Lucas looked back and yelled, "He's coming after them!" The figure was now floating through the air, heading towards them. It wasn't fast, but its presence was so terrifying that all four of them were trembling in their legs. Branches from the jungle trees were tangling in their clothes, and the sound of owls could be heard from somewhere in the distance. "Get to the Jeep, quick!" Jake took out his keys and tried to unlock it, but fingers were numb from the cold. Sarah snatched the keys from him and opened the door. "Get in now!" Everyone jumped into the Jeep. Jake got into the driver's seat and tried to start the engine, but it wouldn't start. "Come on, come on!" He banged on the steering wheel. The figure was now just 10 yards from the Jeep, and its yellow eyes were glowing in the darkness. "Jake, hurry up!" Emily screamed. He looked out. The back window, the figure's fingers were now reaching out toward the Jeep, and where they touched the air, a black mist was spreading. Suddenly the engine roared. Jake put the Jeep into gear and accelerated. The tires kicked up mud, and they sped down the narrow road they'd come from. But then Lucas saw something. "Wait, that sign!" The old sign stood beside the road. "Welcome to Whispering Valley." But now the moonlight clearly showed the tiny letters beneath it. "He who comes here never leaves." "What does that mean?" Sarah's voice was panicked. "It means we're trapped," Emily said softly. She looked behind her. The figure was no longer visible, but the whispers of the forest had started again. This time it sounded like many voices, as if hundreds of people were speaking at once. Jake sped up the Jeep, but the road seemed strangely long. They kept passing the same sign over and over, as if they were stuck in a loop. "That's not possible. We're going straight," Jake said angrily. "Maybe it's an illusion," Lucas suggested. "We should stop and think." "Stop? And let that thing come to us?" Sarah protested. Then the Jeep's engine stopped again. The headlights slowly dimmed and darkness spread all around. The whispers were so close now that they were coming from within earshot. Emily pulled an old book out of her bag that she had borrowed from a library in Boston. "I remember. I read something about Whispering Valley." "What did you read?" Jake asked, snatching the book from her. "This place is cursed," Emily said, trembling. "A whole village disappeared here 100 years ago. People say there's something in the Foresta spirit or a demon that takes those who come here." "And why didn't you tell us here?" Sarah yelled angrily. "I thought it was just a story," Emily clarified. Just then, something banged on the Jeep's window. Outside, there was Vigor again, but this time its face was clearly visible. It looked like a human, but its eyes were vacant, and its mouth was open like a black abyss. It banged on the window, and the glass cracked. "Drive, Jake!" Lucas yelled. Jake tried to start the engine again, but this time something else happened. The figure suddenly disappeared. There was silence. Is he gone?" Sarah asked softly. But then there was a loud jolt from beneath the Jeep, as if someone was lifting it from beneath. All four screamed, and their last hope began to sink in the darkness. The Jeep was swinging in the air. The screams of the four friends echoed through the dark forest, but no one came to help. Jake held the steering wheel tightly, as if he could still control the car. The jolt from underneath had stopped, but the Jeep was still floating inches above the ground. Outside, the terrifying figure appeared again. This time his face was clearer. Black smoke was pouring from his vacant eyes, and his mouth was stretched into a terrifying smile. "He's going to kill us," Sarah screamed. She tried to open the door, but it was jammed. "Wait!" Emily flipped through her book quickly. Her fingers were trembling on the pages. "There's something here. An old legend about the Whispering Valley." Her voice was sharp, as if she wanted to discover the truth before time. 100 years ago, there was a village here, Hope Valley. The villagers angered an ancient spirit in the forest. The spirit's name was Eliara. "Eliara? What the hell is that, Emily?" Jake said angrily, but his eyes were on the figure that was now circling around the Jeep. "Listen," Emily scolded him. They cut down a tree in the Foresta tree that was home to the spirit. It in turn cursed the whole village. Anyone who enters it is haunted until someone breaks the curse. "And how will it be broken?" Lucas asked. He picked up a string from his broken guitar, as if he could do something with it. Emily read further in the book. To break the curse, the tree must be brought back to life. But the tree is just a stump now. It must be here in the forest somewhere. So we have to find that stump? Now? While this thing is eating us? Sarah's voice was desperate. Then the Jeep shook violently and fell to the ground. The tires had burst, and the headlights were completely out. The figure, Eliara, was now standing right in front of the Jeep. She raised her long fingers in the air, and black mist began to spread around. Shadows of faces emerged in the mist, the faces of the villagers of Hope Valley filled with pain and anger. "We have to get out," Jake said. He picked up a baseball bat and hit the glass to open the door. The glass broke and he jumped out. The other three ran after him. "Where to go? We can't see anything," Lucas yelled. The mist was so thick they could barely see each other. "Let's go to the lake," Emily suggested. The book said the tree was near the lake. The four of them held hands and headed into the darkness, toward the lake. Eliara's whisper followed them. "You are mine." But now there was anger in her voice, as if she was afraid her prey would slip away. As they reached the lake shore, they saw an old rotten stump. Its roots were still deep in the ground, but the top had been chopped off. There was a strange energy in the air around it, "It is him," Emily said, "but how do we revive him?" Sarah took a water bottle out of her bag. "Maybe we can water him? Trees need water, right?" She emptied the bottle, but nothing happened. "This is no ordinary tree," Lucas said. He took a lighter out of his pocket. "Maybe fire? Or something else?" "Wait." Jake touched the stump. There were some markings on its surface, like ancient letters. "Emily, is there anything else in the book?" Emily flipped the pages. "Yes, it says here that a blood sacrifice is needed to break the curse. But the sacrifice has to be made to the tree, not to the spirit." "Blood?" Sarah stepped back. "What do you mean?" "Meaning we have to give our blood," Jake said. He took a knife out of his pocket and made a small cut on his palm. Drops of blood fell onto the stump, and then the ground shook slightly. "It works," Emily said. "Everyone has to." One by one, the four cut their hands and poured blood onto the stump. With each drop, green light began to emanate from the stump. Eliara's scream grew louder now. "No!" And she rushed toward them. But as the last drop fell, a tiny sprout sprouted from the stump. The whispers of the forest stopped. Eliara's figure trembled in the wind, and her body began to slowly fall apart. The black mist disappeared, and the shadows of the villagers faded into the air still. With one last scream, Eliara disappeared as well. Silence fell. The moonlight was clear again, and the water of the lake grew calm. The four friends gasped, looking at each other. Is it over?" Sarah asked. "Yes," Emily said, closing the book. "The curse is broken. The tree is alive again." Jake looked at the Jeep. The tires were fixed now, and the headlights were on again. "Let's get out of here." The four got in the Jeep and drove out of Whispering Valley. The sign was now just a blank piece of wood, no words, no warning. The road led them straight to the highway, and in the first rays of the morning they headed for Boston. But when they reached the city, they felt a strange sensation. The cuts on their hands had disappeared, as if nothing had happened. Friends, please tell us in the comment box how you liked this video. And yes, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.